We look at the proposal by the corporate watchdog ASIC to deregister the National Shooting Council, the gun control organisations in the US who have their own taxpayer-funded office in the White House, and how the West Australian Liberals are changing the tune on guns. And welcome to another episode of Gun News Australia, brought to you by Politics Reloaded and Gun Traders Australia. Now, our industry needs good shooting organisations and good people. We need to pull in the same direction if we are to be effective in our fight against the challenges we face. And that's where the National Shooting Council, or NSC, is different. For the past year and a half, the NSC has, at least in my opinion, been a liability for our industry. It's been making wild allegations against politicians and shooters who are on our side of the fence. One person even described their postings as obsessive BS, in their words. Now, there was a comment on social media a little while ago about the status of that organisation, and the entity did respond, but it tried to change the subject. So we thought we'd call it out and actually show those of you who believe the NSC still exists what its current status is. Now, what we're seeing is something that I wouldn't really want to see happen in our industry, but as I said, it's necessary in this case, and that is a proposal by the corporate watchdog, ASIC, the Australian Securities Investments Commission, to deregister the company. And that's because this is an organisation we can do without. Now, I'm going to show you a public notice which appeared in late October, and here it is. I'll be reading this notice out because this podcast obviously comes out in audio version as well. So it's titled, Notice of Proposed Deregistration. ASIC initiated under Section 601AB1 and 1A of the Corporations Act. Now, I'll come back to what Section 601 says shortly, but the notice goes on to name the entity that the notice is about, which is the National Shooting Council, and then the notice says, ASIC proposes to deregister the company under Section 601AB. ASIC may deregister the company when 2 months have passed since publication of this notice, and it's dated, as I said, the 22nd of October. Now, 2 months after the notice is published, we'll put it right on Christmas. Now, and I'm not expecting that ASIC will necessarily do anything that week. I think we're not going to see any action taken for a while. But for those of you who have been behind the NSC and supportive of its comments, you need to know that that's the truth. That's where ASIC is at with the company. So if you go to Section 601AB of the Corporations Act, it reads, and I'll pop this up on the screen for those watching the video version of this. 601 is titled Circumstances in which ASIC may deregister a company. It states, Section 1, ASIC may decide to deregister a company if A, the response to a return of particulars given to the company is at least 6 months late, B, the company has not lodged any other documents under this Act in the last 18 months, and C, ASIC has no reason to believe the company is carrying on a business. Now, the notice also listed Section 601(1)(a), which states ASIC may also decide to deregister a company if the company's review fee in respect of the review date has not been paid in full at least 12 months after the due date for payment. The review fee is simply an annual fee that companies pay towards ASIC to fund what it does. Now, you would have noticed that subsection 1 actually had 3 conditions, and it used the word and in between them. So it means that the entity, in other words, to trigger the deregistration move, would have to have satisfied all 3 criteria, not just one of them. And they were, you might recall, the response to a return of particulars, some details about the company that you have to put in every year. The second was that the company has not lodged any paperwork for a year and a half. And the third was that ASIC has no reason to believe the company is carrying on a business. So all 3 conditions, obviously in this case, were satisfied for ASIC to contemplate deregistration. Now note, they have not actually deregistered the entity yet. You might remember that the notice said that ASIC was going to give them 2 months. and then after that it will decide what to do. The other thing the notice referred to was subsection 1A, which was about the payment of a review fee. Again, every year there's a fee that goes with the paperwork that you have to lodge. It's not that much, but it has not been paid in at least 12 months. And if you do a company search, you'll find that in fact there's money owed to ASIC. It could change on a day-to-day basis, but that's what it says. Now, the other thing I want to point out for those of you, and I sort of refer to them as a bit of a dad's army of people, but those of you who follow the NSC need to be aware that there is a second issue that, in fact, I think this one's being raised with the Australian Business Register, which is run by the Tax Office. But Section 201A of the Corporations Act makes this statement. It says, a public company must have at least 3 directors. Now, the NSC is a company limited by guarantee, which makes it a public company. So the law says that it has to have 3 directors. Now, if you do a company search, you're going to find the company has only, as of the date of when I made these notes, 1 director. So, and that goes back to at least August 2023. So the company has not complied with that requirement, as far as I can tell, in well over a year. So again, whether with ASIC deregisters the NSC remains to be seen. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But either way, one thing's for sure: if this is something they have not told the followers about. Now, my advice to those people who, again, have been following it is don't believe everything you read on the internet. And if they do get deregistered, then I'll be the first to say good riddance. The second matter I wanted to raise in this podcast is a bit of a follow-on from our coverage of the US election where Trump ran. Now, I mentioned there was a gun control office in the White House, and I thought I'd just share a little bit more about that with you, because even though this is in America, this is something we definitely would not want to see happen in Australia. Now, in the White House, there is the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. It was established in September 2023 under President Biden, and basically this page on the White House's website basically says that this is about ending gun violence in their country, which is the most significant legislation in nearly 30 years aimed at achieving that. So this is gun control people who are using taxpayers' money to have their own office in the White House. I would just say that we need to stay vigilant, because what we do not want to see in Australia is the same sort of thing happening in Canberra. We don't want gun control people, whoever it is, to use taxpayers' money to fund basically the fight against us, because that's not what we obviously going to support. Okay. The third item which I wanted to address is the updated position of the Western Australian Liberal Party in Western Australia. Now, you might remember that the WA Liberals voted with Labor in passing the new Firearms Act, which has a whole lot of stuff that needs to be overturned. It's not good for Western Australian shooters, and we certainly don't want to see that find its way in other states either. So Labor and Liberal Party were in lockstep. And you might also remember that the WA Nationals did take a position against the Act, and in fact they've now taken a position in the lead up to the next state election in March to repeal the new legislation. Good on them. They've held, that is, the Nationals held a number of forums out in the country areas. It's been well attended. It's had a lot of support. There's been big donations come the Nationals' way, and some of the major shooting organisations are throwing their weight behind it, and so they should. So well done to those who are doing it. The Liberal Party has been standing by watching this and feeling the heat. You might remember from previous podcasts that there's a number of Liberal Party MPs who either abstained from voting on the new legislation or voted against their party's position on it. They certainly, so in other words, the Liberals are quite split on what to do with guns. And we blame Libby Mettam, who's the leader of that party, for this mess that's been created. However, the Liberals have since released a position, updated position, which I'm going to read again for the benefit of those who are listening to the audio version of this. And this message has been repeated for a number of candidates under their name, but it reads: the WA Liberals will review WA's gun laws and protect the rights of responsible West Australians. The Liberal Party is committed to having WA's gun laws reviewed by a parliamentary committee to make sure all Western Australians have a say. And then it goes on to say that they pushed for this review and Labor knocked it back, and the review will enable a coalition government, if we end up with one, to address any unintended impacts on property rights and freedoms. So it goes on. Now, I'm going to address this two different ways. The first is glass half full. Good on the Liberals for changing their position. They've come some of the way in the direction that we need. But the glass half empty approach is that's not really a commitment to do anything other than have a review, and the review might just be a whitewash. We've seen them before, and that's not really anywhere near as strong as what the National Party has done. So again, to the Liberal Party, thank you for that, but you need to pick up your game if you want to get support from shooters, because they're going to see through that. Now, as a bit of a further message to the Liberal Party, you might remember this map that appeared in the West Australian newspapers in, I think it was March 2022. Now, this is the map. I'm showing the map that, one of the maps that appeared in the papers that showed the location of shooters where they live in West Australia. Now, there were three maps in all. There was a more higher version view, which showed sort of the south west corner of the state. And then there's a couple of other ones that zoom further into the Perth metro area. And the article was really designed to try to scare people, to say, oh my God, there's guns in Perth, and we've got to do something about this. That's really why this map was published, and it was orchestrated by Police Minister Paul Papalia. Now, whilst that was a bad thing and led to other articles and coverage about how that could be reverse engineered to show people where gun owners actually live in their own house, in their homes, there is another side to this coin. If you go back to the map, again, apologies for those who can't see it on the audio version of this, but it shows a huge concentration or concentrations of shooters in around inner metropolitan areas of Perth, especially around the the CBD and the airport. It is crowded. The whole map is absolutely, you can't see the ground because there's so many dots in the way. And as you go further out to past Sawyer Valley and the like, it becomes much more sparse. Now, my message to the Liberal Party is that's telling you actually where the shooters' votes can be gained. It shows you that, in fact, yeah, there are a lot of shooters who live in the metro area, just contrary to what you might think. Just because shooters go hunting and target shooting out in country areas doesn't mean they all live there. They live, that map shows, from Western Australia Police, that map shows where most of the West Australian shooters, who are obviously not, excluding the main towns, but where a huge majority of shooters live. So the Liberal Party will be contesting those seats. There are a lot of votes that are sitting there waiting to be grabbed. So if you change your position, you come up with a better policy, those votes will be there for you, and we will do our best to get your message out. So that's what I want the Liberal Party to do. So look, that's it for this episode of Gun News Australia, a bit of a short one. We're going to be working on a couple more, whether they come out pre-Christmas or not, don't know, but we're looking to also change the way that this is presented to you. So thank you for your time, and we will see you around.